I'm Afreen John, and welcome to the exclusive interview series by South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. Today, we have very distinguished and renowned guest for an interview with whom I'm really thrilled and delighted to speak. Mr. Knox Thames, yes, he is a very well-known personality. He has spoken before the United States Congress, the United Nations, the European Parliament, the Organization of American States, the OSCE, and the US Military War College in a variety of contexts. He is the initiator and primary author of the first of its kind Handbook of Religious Freedom Advocacy. Knox Thames holds a Juris Doctorate degree from American University Washington College of Law and a master's degree in International Affairs from American University School of International Service. He is an experienced foreign policy specialist with in-depth knowledge of a wide variety of international affairs, having worked for the State Department and two distinct U.S. government foreign policy commission, religious freedom and minority rights, South Central Asia, the Middle East, and multilateral organizations are among the areas he has worked. Knox worked for the U.S. Commission on Security and Cooperation, in Europe the Helsinki Commission, the U.S. Department of State, and the U.S. Department of Defense throughout his 20 years government career. He has spoken before the United States Congress, the United Nations, the European Parliament, the Organization of American States, the OSCE, and the US Military War College in a variety of contexts. He is the initiator and primary author of the first of its kind Handbook of Religious Freedom Advocacy. Well, very warmly welcome, Mr. Knox Thames. How are you doing today?
Great. It's great to be with you this morning and this afternoon.
In the name of God, let's start us today's interview. You work as a senior visiting expert at the U.S. Institute of Peace. So what are the current projects you are working on, and what actually does this position entails? What initiative, efforts, or experience you are most proud of?
So the U.S. Institute of Peace was created in 1984 by the American Congress to develop strategies to end violent conflict. It works around the world, in South Asia, in the Middle East, in South America, in Africa, working with peacemakers, practitioners to find ways to promote peace, to promote conflict resolution. My specific work focuses on the Middle East, South Asia, and the role of religion in conflict, looking for ways to create space for diversity of belief and peace among people of different backgrounds and ethnicities.
Well, moving forward, could you briefly explain your job and responsibilities at the U.S. Department of State Special Advisor for Religious Minorities in the Middle East and in South Central Asia?
Sure. The United States has a long tradition of promoting the rights of religious minorities. It goes back to the founding of our country, with many of the first settlers leaving Europe or North America because they were experiencing religious persecution. So protecting religious minorities, protecting religious freedom has been a foundational part of our country. Of course, we're not perfect. We've struggled to respect that right for all Americans, but it's something that is deeply ingrained in our experience. So in the late 90s, our Congress decided that the United States should be an advocate for minority rights, for religious freedom internationally, not to export or force other countries to our approach, but rather out of a reflection of our shared commitments to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that the United Nations created. So when I was in government for 20 years, I worked in different offices that focus on religious freedom, that focus on the rights of religious minorities. I traveled extensively, particularly through South Asia, to Pakistan almost 10 times, Afghanistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, to have conversations with government leaders, with elected officials, with civil society, with religious communities about how can we promote greater understanding and respect for the right of religious freedom for everybody.
Moving forward, Mr. Knox, what role does the U.S. Institute of Peace plays in the safeguarding persecuted minorities across the world, particularly in South Asia?
USIP is looking for ways to promote an environment where conflict is no more, looking for ways to empower peacemakers to play an active role in their societies. So we spent a lot of time focusing on education, the importance of teaching children, teaching students how to live with people who are different than themselves, to respect pluralism, to appreciate the value of human rights. USIP has also emphasized conflict resolution, such as in Afghanistan, empowering female peacemakers to play an active role in the peace jirgas and the peace process. So there's a variety of ways that USIP is active. And if you go to our website, usip.org, you can see the wealth of information that's been provided by the Institute over almost 40 years now.
Oh, well, that is really great and really appreciated that work. My next question is, what does it mean to define minorities in the current political scenario when some political establishment sees minorities as a threat to the nations?
Yeah, this is, I think, the biggest challenge that we will face in the 21st century. It's in a democratic context. How do we protect the rights of religious minorities? In so many places around the world, we see politicians running a campaign, asking for people to vote for them, not with a positive vision of a country, but a negative vision, stirring up fear of the other, like vote for me and I'll protect you from them. And sadly, we know that works, that gets people into office. And so when I would travel to South Asia and engage government leaders, say in Pakistan, and urge them to end the blasphemy law or at least reform it, I would realize that I was dealing with people who were elected on a platform that was positively inclined to keep the law going, to make it even more aggressive. Or when I would go to India and I would talk about the lynching of Muslims, I would get a very cold response because this use of fear as a campaign tactic is very effective. And so now we see leaders who are fulfilling campaign promises by being hateful towards minorities.
Well, moving forward, what are your fundamental thoughts on how government might successfully promote religious and belief freedom across the world and particularly in South Asia?
Yeah, I think it's going to take countries who respect diversity, who respect minority rights, who respect freedom of belief and conscience and religion to engage our partners in South Asia. The United States, when we talk with our friends on the subcontinent, we don't do it in a lecturing way, or at least that's not our intent. We don't do it to try to say we have it right, you have it wrong, but we try to share from our own experience. Look, we've struggled with these issues. Our main challenge has been racial minorities, African Americans, and the discrimination that they faced. But we also, as we're becoming more diverse, with Americans holding really every faith in the world somewhere in our country, we've had to learn how to live with people who are different. We don't always get it right, but we have a lot of mechanisms in place that try to correct those wrongs. And so we share that information out of a spirit of friendship, also knowing that if countries can get this question right, if they can manage diversity, if they can create space for pluralism, they'll be stronger, they'll be more dynamic, their economies will be more creative, they'll be better off, they'll be better positioned to compete with a rising China. So it's in their interests and in their values to solve this challenge.
Well, really appreciated. What I think and I believe that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Moving forward, given the implementing humanitarian crisis pertaining to the minorities in South Asia, which issues, scenarios, or country is the most challenging?
I think right now it's Afghanistan, hands down. The withdrawal of the U.S. military is, as everyone is watching, leading to great instability. I wrote an article for Time magazine about a month ago, highlighting the situation for the Hazara Shia. I'm very concerned about their situation. There's a history of persecution by the Taliban against Hazara because they're Shia, because they have Asiatic features. And now we know that ISIS singles them out for murder because they're Shia. Who's going to protect them? How are they going to survive? It's a question that we need to spend more time thinking about. I don't have the answer, but we can't just ignore it either and wish it would go away. There's 3 to 5 million Hazara in Afghanistan. If they all run for their lives, where are they going to go? Pakistan, Iran, the international community can't absorb that many new refugees, along with the other Afghanis who are also concerned about where the future may go for that country. So Afghanistan, I think, has to be front and center in our mind when we think about the region and possible atrocities.
Well, moving forward, what do you think should be done in the near future to solve the most pressing concerns confronting the South Asian minorities?
Well, we need to get the governments themselves to stand up to uphold their commitments they took under the various UN treaties and documents. The first responsibility lies with government. They are the protectors of the rights of their citizens. So we need to see India protecting their Muslim minorities. We need to see India protecting their Christian minorities. We need to see Pakistan protecting their Hindu minorities and Sikh minorities and Christian minorities and Ahmadi and Shia. Similar to every country in the region is so incredibly diverse. I mean, South Asia could be a world leader in showing other countries in Europe how to do this because you've lived with the diversity. You've had it. I mean, South Asia is the birthplace of Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism. Christianity has been there since one of the 12 disciples of Christ brought it to the subcontinent. Islam has been there for centuries. So South Asia could be an example for getting this right, but it's going to fall on the responsibility of government leaders, elected officials, and religious leaders to promote a positive vision.
Well, Mr. Knox, you left the government in July 2020 to be writing a book. If I'm not mistaken, it's about the 21st century strategies for combating religious persecution. Please tell us a little about your book.
Sure. I'm trying to chart a path forward so that the persecution that we saw in the 20th century actually ends in the 21st century. We all know what happened during the Holocaust, during World War II, where government, Nazi Germany, specifically targeted Jews because of their religion and ethnicity for extermination. Out of that tragedy, out of that horror, the UN human rights system was born, trying to say never again would we allow such atrocities to happen. But we know that never again is happening again. We see what's happening to the Uyghurs in China, the Rohingya in Burma, what I was just talking about, the potential atrocities against Hazara in Afghanistan. And so to ensure that the 21st century stops the murder of people because of what they believe or how they look, we need new strategies. So the book is going to talk about that, draw on some lessons that I learned over my career, put out some new ideas out there about how we can all work together with diplomats, parliamentarians, civil society leaders, religious leaders to find a new way to protect people and allow them to believe and pursue truth as their conscience leads.
Well, Mr. Knox, well wishes and very best of luck for your book. Moving forward to the next question. In your article, My Future is Now, an Afghan woman for a threatened minorities restless with what happens when the United States withdraw. You wrote, I'm afraid of the future. What does this imply?
Well, she doesn't know what tomorrow is going to bring. When I reached out to her, she's now a student in Australia pursuing a PhD. She had just written her friends to extend condolences because they had lost loved ones in this when ISIS bombed the girls' school. There's just been a string of premeditated attacks on the Hazara, and it's unclear what's going to happen next. She doesn't know. The whole community doesn't know. So far, they've refused to form militias. They've refused to take up weapons. They've invested in the Afghan government. And if the government fails them, she doesn't know what the future means. This is where us here in the United States, in the West, but also in the region, in places like India, Pakistan, need to be thinking more broadly about the future of that community and the future of that country.
Well, Mr. Knox, really appreciate it, and you're doing such a great work. Moving forward to the next question. Well, what are your opinions on South Asia present level of religious freedom? What are some of the most common obstacles in debate between free speech and religion and culture sensitivities? What can South Asia countries do to reduce the likelihood of conflict?
I think one commonality throughout the region are laws that limit speech that someone considers offensive. So you have the blasphemy law in Pakistan. The various Indian states have laws that limit speech, allegedly on religious grounds. Bangladesh has similar structures. And we've seen how these laws are abused, that they empower the majority to silence a minority, and it doesn't work the other way. So because of that, we see individuals jailed for years, their lives threatened, sometimes ending in murder because of what they said. I think this is an issue that South Asia needs to address. This is one that can't be ignored. We've already seen where Pakistan I've seen reports of over 200 people in jail for the crime of blasphemy, but we know the law has no definitional standard. It's horribly abused in business disagreements and arguments over non-religious things. Someone will allege blasphemy just to get this person put in jail or maybe murdered. There needs to be reform of the law. I think it should be removed, but certainly reformed to make it more difficult to use and to create a punishment for lying. Right now, there's no disincentive to abuse this law, and we're seeing countless people, the majority of whom are Muslim, actually victimized in unfair and unjust ways.
Moving forward to the next question. My question is, in the South Asia, social media plays significant part in persecution. Please recommend some possible techniques and strategies to address the problems of religious freedom and the spread of the hate speech on social media.
Yeah. I think when governments are abusing and the domestic remedies, the court systems are proving ineffective, this is where advocates should look to the international system. Of course, you can approach the US government, Western embassies to encourage their engagement to press for reforms, but you can also go to the United Nations system. The UN has a special envoy, a special rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, who's actually South Asian, Ahmed Shahid. He was the former foreign minister of the Maldives. He can be your advocate. He can send urgent appeals to governments asking for a redress of the wrong. It won't necessarily solve the problem, but it's another avenue. There's also the Human Rights Council. There's the UN General Assembly, Third Committee on Human Rights. So there's a web of interconnected offices and tools that advocates can use. And I will just share with you that the first book I wrote was a guidebook for advocates on how to do religious freedom advocacy. And if you go to baylorpress.com and put in my name, you'll see the book, International Religious Freedom Advocacy. And now they're having a sale and you can get 20% off the book right now. And so I think it would be a useful tool for your viewers to give them the information they need to be more effective advocates.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Knox. Well, what I believe that religious liberty or religion of freedom might be supposed to mean that everybody is free to discuss religion. Well, because of the widespread use of violence against minorities, rights activities in the South Asia region, how would you characterize what countries' activities as more insecure, unprotected, or unsafe? What action should they take to safeguard advocates for minority rights?
The key thing is arrest people who commit violence against minorities. There should be accountability for the perpetrators of hate crimes. I think in so many countries, there's a climate of impunity where people have no fear of doing wrong against the other. So in India, when mobs are stirred up and people are lynched, it's very rare to see anyone arrested and prosecuted and actually sent to jail. In Pakistan, similarly, when mobs are stirred up over a blasphemy allegation and homes are burned down and people are murdered, it's very, very rare to see anyone put in jail for those crimes. And I think because of that, it empowers the most extreme voices in society to threaten people who are just wanting to practice their beliefs peacefully. And I think the first step is protecting those minorities by holding attackers, vigilantes accountable and sending them to jail.
COVID-19, and now we all are fronting from the Delta virus. Do you think that COVID-19 has the potential to exacerbate the already difficult situation for minorities in South Asia, give the use of diverse languages and the has to limit civil liberties by some governments in this region?
Absolutely. I think the way that COVID-19 has been used to scapegoat minorities, to highlight them as they're the reason we're having this problem, when really it's about governmental failure, is something we've seen throughout South Asia. We've seen it around the world. The UN Special Rapporteur, Mr. Syed, who I mentioned a moment ago, he actually issued a public statement in April of last year, the start of the COVID crisis, warning the world about the scapegoating of minorities and how it puts them at greater risk. And also with that, we've seen minorities deprived of or denied medical attention, food aid, because they are wrongly believed to be the cause of the problem. Yes, there are some stories where people brought back the disease, but that doesn't mean a whole community is at fault. That doesn't mean a whole community should be blamed for it. We're all in this together, and we have to be working hand in hand to defeat this virus, to ensure that, hopefully one day soon it'll be a thing of the past.
Well, Indian Constitution declared the country to be secular and guarantees religious and beliefs of freedom. However, there are fears that Christian, Muslims, and Dalits are being persecuted and discriminated against, and that is the situation has gotten worse in this recent areas. What are your thoughts on this?
I completely agree. I think the message of Prime Minister Modi's party, the BJP, and the associated organizations of the RSS have promoted a very negative conversation in the country. Conversation is not the right way to say it. Have promoted a very negative view of the other. We've seen in 8 or 9 Indian states now anti-conversion laws passed that are horribly abused, that send a chilling message to Christians and Muslims that your faith is not welcome. We've seen this quote unquote love jihad meme appear that prevents Muslims and Muslim men and Hindu women from marrying, all promoted by the state or political leaders. And we've seen the lack of accountability again for these mob attacks. Thankfully, I haven't heard of any happening recently. But I think there's a lot of dry tinder, and a spark can create a big flame. And I don't have any faith that the government would be willing to step into that to protect minorities should violence occur again.
About 5th of August 2019, after abolishing of Article 370 of the Constitution, India has estimated the unique state and autonomy of occupied Kashmir. India has increased military forces in the area, imposed lockdown and longest curfew in Kashmir. Well, in the valley, thus cutting it off from the rest of the world. Moreover, throughout India occupied Kashmir, thus cutting it off from the rest of the world. Well, there have been violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, the International Convention on the Civil and Political Rights, 1966, and the Convention of the Rights of the Child, 1990. Particularly since the repeal of the Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. What are your thoughts in this context?
Yeah, it's concerning how the Indian government moves so quickly to remove the basic rights and to remove elected leaders from the community. Jammu and Kashmir is an incredibly complicated situation with contested claims between India and Pakistan that go back to partition in 1947. But I don't have enough knowledge about the intricacies of the situation to give any real strong policy prescriptions, other than this kind of strong, heavy-handed move that the Modi government took is not the way to bring peace to that area. And it's going to take a lot of conversations across communal lines, across international boundaries, between governments, that is lacking on both sides. So I'm not optimistic about that challenge being resolved anytime soon.
Well, moving forward to the next question, given that minorities have faced increased discrimination and persecution in the recent years, it is important to mentor and press government to pass human rights measures. Do you believe a regional level platform would be successful in controlling and or overcoming this threat?
I think it would certainly help. It's going to take many different efforts all coming together at the same time to really see a change in South Asia. Legal reforms, for sure. It's going to take discipline by political leaders to not play the fear-mongering card. It's going to take at least new thinking by religious leaders to promote a spirit of dialogue and understanding towards minorities. It's going to take, in the case of Pakistan, the military pulling back to not promote those voices of violence or to limit journalists by arresting or disappearing them. There's not going to be, there's no silver bullet, if you know that phrase, turn of phrase. There's not one thing that can happen that will fix it all. It's going to take lots of steps in many different directions over a lot of time. But I have such faith and respect in the capacity of my friends across the subcontinent, of their diligence and intelligence and experience with diversity that is lacking in so many other regions. I think there's such potential, like I said, for South Asia to be a leader on these topics. And it's unfortunate, it's tragic that really the story is one of repression and not freedom.
Really, Knox Thames, I really appreciated your thoughts. Well, I think minority rights or human rights are the basic rights that belongs to all of us simply because we all are human. They embody the key value in our society, such as fairness, dignity, equity, and respect. Well, moving to the next question, SARIM is constantly on the lookout of experts to speak out our public awareness event in July 2019. We had an international conference with the speakers from the United States, Canada, Bangladesh, Maldives, and India. Would you want to join us in Pakistan for our next gathering if the global pandemic situation is stable?
I'd be open to it. I love Pakistan. I've always enjoyed visiting. And if I can't come in person, through this Zoom technology that we've all discovered over the past year and a half, I would certainly be happy to be beamed in via Zoom.
Okay. Youth is the backbone of nation building, and youth is the nation builders. My question is, finally, in the honor of International Youth Day, what message do you have for the South Asia minorities youth?
That you are the future, that if we're going to see a tomorrow that is better than today, where people of different religions, ethnicities, philosophical points of view can live together in peace and harmony, it's really up to youth to begin that change. It'll be hard. There'll be resistance from the status quo, from the vested interests that are profiting off of negativity and hate. But I think because of the youth bulge in South Asia and because these are democratic countries, if youth can be committed to these things through the power of the ballot box, the power of your voice, the power of your organizational strength, you can change it. And when I was talking about all those different components that come together, it's going to be you all leading the charge through those various institutions. And because of conversations like this, I'm encouraged. And I hope and think that that day will come. And I'm happy to lend my voice to support this important work.
Well, really, Mr. Knox, I'm agree with your words. Well, I love the quote quoted by the Henry David. He said that youth gets together with their material to build a bridge to the moon or maybe a palace on the earth. Then in Middle Age, he decided to build a woodshed with them instead. Well, at the end, freedom of religion or religious liberty is a principle that supports the freedom of an individual or community in public or private to manifest religious or believe in the teaching, practice, worship, and observance. Freedom means to supremacy of human rights everywhere. Human beings are human beings. Just treat everyone like that. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Knox Thames, for giving your precious and valuable time to us. Thank you for sharing your delightful and tremendous thought with us. Truly appreciate it, sir. Now, Afreen John is signing off for today's interview. Remember me in your prayers. Take care. Goodbye. God bless you all.